Open the podcast bay door as hell.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 83 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead, and this is the conclusion of the deep dive into WandaVision with myself and listener Joel L. As always, spoilers abound. Hopefully you've watched the end of the series, including the mid- and post-credits scenes, before listening to this. Joel and I have a lot to talk about, with all of our theories being conclusively put to the test in this series finale, so let's get right into it. Welcome back, everyone. We are on the final episode of WandaVision. We are talking with Joel L., who has been my guest this entire time. Hello, Joel.
Hello, and very soon you'll be rid of me.
I
was talking to the audience.
Well, okay. That's true. I can't get rid of you that easily.
No, you've tried in the past.
Anyways, I have appreciated your thoughts and your questions this entire time, so thank you for agreeing to do this.
I've enjoyed your thoughts and answers.
Even if some of them have been wrong, as it turns out.
Well, but the answers that you gave is different than the speculations that you gave.
Fair enough. So let's get into the show and our final thoughts and see where our speculations went right and where they went wrong.
We start off with the Previously On, and I have 2 notes just from the Previously On.
Okay. What's your first one?
We start off with Hayward saying, well, that's just it, Wanda. He isn't yours. He's ours. He didn't say that part in the show.
Oh, really? I didn't notice that. I did not notice that line was new.
In the show, he says, well, that's just it, Wanda. He's not yours. And then she breaks the window and goes down to find out if it's true.
Okay.
If he had said to her, he's ours, she would have responded a little differently.
Probably true.
I mean, he might have prompted her to do what he claimed later that she did.
Right.
So, showing him to be more evil than he even was in the show, which was pretty significant.
Yeah. Turns out Hayward's a terrorist.
More than a little bit. And using S.W.O.R.D. as his play toy to do so, which we will get to a little bit more later. But
of course.
The other note I had on the Previously On was in the Previously On when Agatha says, and that makes you the Scarlet Witch, then we have this back and forth strobe of the image of the Scarlet Witch in the Mind Stone.
Right, yeah, I made a note of that as well. I love that editing, kind of machine gun back and forth between those two moments. And we'll get to the specific moment later, but I kind of think you might have been right with that being future Wanda and not necessarily a past iteration of the Scarlet Witch like I had suspected.
I agree based on what happens later in the episode, yeah.
Yeah, but we can only get to later in the episode if we keep moving on. Let's get into the fight between Agatha and Wanda.
It starts off real quickly with Agatha absorbing Wanda's magic like she did with her coven and saying, I take power from the undeserving, it's kind of my thing. And based off of the way that you described this character in the comics, it never was before.
No. You know, the MCU has been very good at taking characters and using them for what they need for the story. And if that means altering who they are from the comics somewhat, then that's what they'll do. For instance, the Skrulls in Marvel Comics have always been the villains. And we get to Captain Marvel, and they're basically the refugees, the victims. We get that tease of them being the villains. They do that misdirect of making them look like the villains at first, but then we find out that they're not. They play a lot with our expectations. And so, this entire time I was thinking, maybe she's doing this for a good reason. Maybe Agatha is trying to give Wanda much needed therapy to accept her loss and move on. But no, she is full on villain in this one.
We started off in our conversations with, okay, in the comics she's apparently chaotic good, and in the show she seems to be more chaotic neutral, but maybe they'll reveal some chaotic good in there.
They went the other direction.
No, yeah, she keeps calling Wanda the source of chaos magic, but she's just the source of chaos.
Yeah, and in this early part of the fight, there's a line she says where she says, "You're clearly over your little red head." And it pointed out something that I've noticed and haven't commented on. Wanda's hair has gotten a lot lighter and redder since she first appeared. If you look at her in Age of Ultron, she's got this dark brown, almost black hair, and then in Civil War, it's more of a brownish red. And as they've moved forward in time, now she's almost not quite strawberry blonde, but a very light red hair color. And I have to think that they're trying to say something with that. That it's not just an aesthetic choice, but that they're also trying to make her more heroic looking, maybe, with that hair color choice.
Right, there were two directions that I was thinking, and one of them is that in visual medium storytelling, a lot of times darker is more evil.
Right.
And there's a lot of political things to be said about that, but not necessary in this context. But just in general, her hair was darker the more she was... I mean, she started off on the side with Ultron and gradually became more Avengerly. So that's absolutely one of the things that they could be saying with that, is she's getting more and more good, although there's conversation to be had later in this episode. But the other thing is that it could be either intentional, in-universe intentional, or in production intentional, that they wanted, by the time she was called the Scarlet Witch, to have her hair be red.
Which also makes sense. And so it could be she's getting more in touch with her magic sort of thing, if you want an in-universe explanation for that.
Right.
Which thus avoids kind of the dark equals evil, light equals good, which has some problematic connotations these days.
Some?
Many.
Yeah.
But back into the fight, we get the first of two Wizard of Oz references when Wanda crashes the car, sends the car flying into Agatha and into the house.
It's also the first of several moments where we see Wanda saying, okay, obviously just direct force hitting her with magic isn't working. Let's use our brain and try and come up with another solution.
Yeah. Wanda is being really smart in a lot of this fight, which is always good to see. And we have an even brainier fight later that we'll talk about. But I always love when these confrontations aren't just brute force and big special effects, but there's thought put into it, there's strategy, and you get to see something about the character.
Yeah. And we see that several times in this episode. Wanda is adaptive.
Yeah.
And she's really good at it. And then, yes, as you said, we've got that Wicked Witch of the East moment with the boots.
Which I thought was hilarious when it happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seeing the boots there, and at first I laughed just at the reference, and then to reveal that it's just the boots and she disappeared added an extra layer onto it. And both of them get a bunch of disappearing and reappearing moments that are just perfect for the characters and perfect for trying to win the fight.
Absolutely.
And then after that Wizard of Oz moment, we get Cataract showing up. And, oh man, the bone cracking noise.
Oh my god.
When he's pressing her head.
She recovers from that particular injury really quickly.
Yeah, that should have killed her if...
Pretty close to instantly. Yeah.
That kind of pressure on the brain is not something you just shake off and walk away from. I wish they had shown some sort of...
healing energy around her head or something.
Either healing energy around her head or some sort of force field protecting her when it first started. Or...
Yeah, but then we wouldn't have gotten Cataract's great line of, and I was told you were strong.
Yeah, that's true.
Or powerful, whatever it was.
It was powerful. That's true, but yeah, something to show that she needed her magic to either prevent or heal the damage being done.
Right, because witch or not, Scarlet Witch or not, she's still a freaking human.
Right. She doesn't have super strength, invulnerability,
mutant healing factor.
Right. None of that unless it's from her magic being cast. Unless it's from an active effect. She doesn't passively have any of those powers.
Exactly, and we have always, in the MCU anyway, I can only assume in the comics, we have always seen her powers associated with some visual representation.
Yes, that is definitely true in the comics as well. She has always had some sort of red energy to illustrate her abilities. So yeah, that moment, the bone cracking, gets interrupted by Vision returning.
Right.
Finally.
It's only been a couple episodes.
Yeah, but we know that this town is small.
Right.
And so it feels like it's been a lot more time than it should take for Vision to get from, even if they were on the exact opposite side of town, the confrontation with Monica, then going to Agatha's house and going down into the basement and having all of that. Now, that one could argue that the time travel, the memory stuff could be...
was all at the speed of thought.
Right. So that could be argued to have taken less time than it appeared to the audience, but still, it still feels
flying,
like...
and he flies fast.
Exactly. We've seen how fast he can travel. We had that great moment back in episode 3 with the doctor.
Right. And that was on foot.
Yeah. So we know he can travel very fast, and we know this town isn't very big, so it really feels like he should have been here earlier, but I understand for the sake of the story that This is when he showed up.
Suspension of disbelief.
Yes. And Wanda gives her apology to Vision, and then she says, "Vision, this is our home.
Then let's fight for it."
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, in the second trailer, this is a moment that was given. And so I knew it was coming. And I think this, more than anything, is going to make me stop watching trailers for things that I am already planning to watch.
Understandable.
Because the fact that I knew it was going to build to a big fight, I won't say it ruined anything for me, but it made it a little less enjoyable.
That's understandable, and really the whole purpose of trailers is to get you to decide to watch something.
True.
So if you already know...
Yeah. It's still very tempting, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially when it's something you're really looking forward to. I'm not going to go as far as my friend, who closes his eyes and plugs his ears and hums when the trailers start in the movie theater, but I'm not going to hit YouTube for every trailer as soon as it hits online.
I have been that guy in the past. Your Patreon listeners heard me say it in our first episode together, that when the trailer for the first Tim Burton Batman movie came on the screen, I did exactly that. I hunched over and plugged my ears and closed my eyes and hummed to myself, and, I don't need to go that far anymore.
Yeah.
But it made sense at the time. And
yeah, I mean, to each their own. If that's what makes you happy and you think you get the most enjoyment out of the experience of the movie with no spoilers whatsoever, then great. Then that's for you.
Which is very much the point of this podcast.
Yeah.
Enjoy your thing the way you want to enjoy your thing.
Exactly. So, like I said, whatever makes you happy, and I think I've decided that I will be a little happier if I watch fewer trailers.
That makes sense.
But getting back to the show, Vision and Cataract fly off fighting, Wanda goes after Agatha, and we finally get the reveal of where Monica has been.
Yeah.
And now, she obviously hasn't fully acknowledged or accepted or received her powers, because if she were able to make herself into just energy, then Pietro's super speed flick would not do anything to her. Just like the bullets don't do anything to her later.
Right. But she doesn't know. And as with so many origin stories, we always have to have that sequence of, wait, I can do that?
Yes, and we get that moment from her later. So she is stuck in the house with Pietro.
Right.
And his scenes in here are hilarious. I absolutely love Evan Peters' portrayal of Pietro.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't learn a lot at this point yet.
Right.
That's going to come a little later. Instead, we cut back to Hayward watching the Vision and Cataract fight as much as he can.
Right.
And Wu gets his moment to shine here.
Before we even get to Wu, we got Hayward talking to his underling, and I did kind of enjoy the reveal of him trying to get more direct control over what's happening inside the Hex, and her saying, no, we don't have any say here.
He's still ours as best as we can tell. He's still under our control, but he can't... I've forgotten the exact phrasing, but he basically wants to reiterate the Prime Directive, which is get Vision and Scarlet Witch.
Which, I mean, if he knows anything about computers, is totally unnecessary.
Well, yes, if it's just a computer.
But if it's a sentient weapon...
Yes.
Okay, but...
If
still,
it has any sort of sentience and can think for itself, then you may occasionally need to, wipe that. This is Prime.
Yeah, but in the middle of a big battle, that's just dumb.
No, it's a bad idea if Cataract works anything like a real computer.
Which, who knows, but at the same time, Hayward has shown he may be evil, but he has not up to this point been stupid. And that's just a dumb move.
I don't think he's been particularly smart, either. He's not really covering his tracks that well. You know, Wu confronts him at this moment, and Hayward doesn't deny it. There are plenty of sword agents around, and if any one of them says, well, that's not right, they could easily become a whistleblower and say, Wu is right, he said this, this, and this.
Right.
So he's kind of gone full mustache twirling.
He's gone into the realm of what a lot of people think of as comic book villain.
Right.
I've got my henchmen. I have implicit trust that all of my henchmen are totally on my side.
Yeah. And I've enjoyed our theorizing, but I've also enjoyed the show on its own merits.
Yeah.
This is the one thing that I think the theorizing would have made it better. If he was going to go full evil like this, I think he should have been affected by Mephisto in some way or something along those lines. Maybe Agatha could have planted something into his head if you don't want to bring Mephisto in at this moment, which they obviously didn't want to do.
Right.
You could have had Agatha meet him before she went into Westview and say, "You're going to come do this."
Sure, which does bring her timeline into question, because really, how did she get in, and when did she come in? Because, I mean, when we talk about the timeline inside the Hex, Wanda casts her initial spell, creates the damn thing. Agatha gets the spider sense. Ooh, a whole heck of a lot of spells were just cast over there. Let's go there. She somehow travels from wherever she is, but let's say she was in the neighborhood, because why not? She has to get into the Hex and then be in one of the very first scenes in the first episode.
Well, last episode we saw the moment where Wanda changed things.
Yes.
And we see Wanda and Vision sit down and say, "Let's hang out and watch TV."
Mm-hmm.
And so I think up until Agatha showed up, Wanda and Vision were leading a perfectly peaceful life. No conflicts, no weird sitcom shenanigans. And it's when Agatha shows up that we actually get our first sitcom moment. And so she's the one who brings that in and gives her conflict. And I think Agatha can show up very, very quickly after that, because we have seen that she has some range of teleportation. She also has flight. She can travel very quickly from one place to another, no matter where she is.
I think that to some degree, the conceit of the show falls apart a little bit when you say that. Because the whole creation of this world was Wanda being obsessed with the Dick Van Dyke Show and other sitcoms. Dick Van Dyke Show had conflict in every episode.
That's true, but it was also just that idealized life that Father Knows Best, as Darcy put it. She wanted to live
there.
She wanted to live in that world. And yes, there are minor conflicts, but that's not necessarily what inspired her, what she loved about that world so much. She wanted it to be a peaceful place where she could live in harmony with Vision.
I don't know that I agree with you on that. I think that what she loved about it was that the shenanigans were all revealed at the end of every episode to have just been okay.
Okay.
There were shenanigans in every episode, and she loved that.
Yeah, but then at the end it was all revealed to be a dream or
whatever it ended up being.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I don't know. I don't know how this all works out, but you and I have discussed earlier in this mini-series of the podcast that the first episode that we see is very clearly a pilot episode.
It is, and it's the first episode that Sword sees, and we know that there is a significant time gap between when Wanda leaves Sword and makes this world and when Sword shows up.
Right.
So that's another reason why I think that even if there were some sitcom shenanigans, it was probably all unrelated to their powers until Agatha showed up.
Okay.
And again, Agatha showed up pretty quickly because, as you said, in that pilot episode, she's the first person to show up on screen besides Vision and Scarlet Witch.
Right. And we do see in Agatha All Along.
Yep, that's what I was about to say.
Appearance in town.
Yeah. We see her change from color to black and white and turn around and shush the camera. And that is her walking up at the pilot episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I think that Agatha is the one who really made things move forward and added the real conflict to Wanda and Vision's life.
Yeah, I guess. That one, to me, feels less of a question mark and more of an eyebrow raise.
Okay. Yeah. Again, it's one of the great things about this show is that you can have different interpretations.
Sure.
And we can have this sort of discussion and each walk away thinking, yeah, the other one has good points, but I'm still sticking to what I think.
Oh, if only everyone was capable of that specific thought.
Oh, yeah. Let's not go there, though.
Okay.
Instead, let's go back to Wu.
Yes! Oh, God. When he takes off the handcuffs and says, flourish!
Yes. Now...
That was such a great moment.
Now, this is Hayward's second point of just being stupid.
Okay, yes.
You
Absolutely,
assign someone to watch him.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but you're having a conversation with the guy and he twice sits down on the desk. He's doing something.
Yeah.
And whose phone is that? Because Jimmy opens it up pretty quick, and I don't know a single person who doesn't have a password on their phone.
Yeah, you got a point. It may have been Jimmy's phone. It may have been taken away from him.
At which point, they took his phone away from him, put it on the desk, and then he took it back, and no one noticed?
Again, Hayward is kind of dumb in these scenes.
Yeah.
Hayward is... Like I said, Hayward is going full comic book villain and is monologuing and is putting people in these traps of, yes, I've got you handcuffed. There's no way you can escape. I'll just turn around and not look at you anymore.
Yeah, sit on this hay bale.
Yeah. But yeah, seeing him use the little safety pin to undo his cuffs and the flourish moment...
God,
what a
great callback to the magic show in the show.
Yes. It's nice that we know they've seen the show, so they can make these references.
Right, it's kind of meta self-awareness, but kind of not, because it's in the context of the world that they've created, and it's awesome.
Yeah. So Jimmy calls for backup at this point. And I kind of assume it has to be his phone, because how many coworkers' numbers do you have memorized?
Oh God, at this point, none.
Exactly. We've all become so dependent on our phones. He has to be using his own contact list to call Cliff.
Yeah, you're right, because there's just no way. There's no way.
So moving on from that point... We cut back to Wanda heading to the middle of town, and all the residents are still walking around like everything's normal.
Mm-hmm.
And then Agatha attacks from behind, and we get the confirmation of what I had suspected.
The Darkhold?
The Darkhold, yes.
That's the Book of the Damned.
Yes. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Darkhold and how it's been portrayed, because I don't remember if this was cut out or not, but the Darkhold has shown up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and in Runaways.
I forgot about it in Runaways.
Yeah, and it's handled very differently there than it is here, and it's also handled differently from how it is in the comics.
Mm-hmm.
All three of those portrayals are at least somewhat different. So, in the comics, the Darkhold was created by, I've always pronounced it as Chthon. It is Chthon.
So pronounced similar to Cthulhu.
Yes. So, the Darkhold was created by Chthon and contains all of his evil works and spells, and has been kind of a MacGuffin in the comics as a source of power and an evil spellbook. In fact, there was a series in the 90s when Marvel Comics had split up all of their titles into very specific groups. So there were the Spider-Man titles, there were the Marvel Heroes, which was basically the Avengers titles, and there was one group called the Midnight Suns.
Okay.
And that was Ghost Rider, the Night Stalkers, which are some of the vampire hunters in the Marvel Universe. And there was one title specifically called Darkhold. And there was this being that we just refer to as the Darkhold Dwarf. You know, he looked kind of like the dwarf in the Red Room in Twin Peaks.
Okay.
And he would go around with these envelopes that had pages from the Darkhold in it that would cast a spell and grant somebody some sort of wish that they wanted, but at a cost. Twisting what they wanted and releasing some sort of evil power.
Standard genie stuff.
Yeah. And there was a family, the Montessis, who were charged with keeping the book out of the wrong hands and that sort of thing. And it followed them as they tracked down these pages and tried to get them back and keep them under lock and key. And then in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Runaways, the Darkhold basically contains all knowledge, if you can figure out how to access it. In the comics, if you have a page in front of you, you can read it and you can do the spell. You don't have to be any sort of
special mystical being that can read the darn thing.
Exactly. There's no special key to unlock it. There's nothing that needs to be done. You can just open it up and start reading. Or open that envelope and pull out the page and start reading that page.
Always a good idea.
Yeah. Now, in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and in Runaways, you had to do a special ritual to be able to reveal the pages it showed as completely blank until then. And weirdly, it was almost completely used to show people how to make certain technology.
Okay.
In Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it was responsible for the framework and the life model decoys. It helped bring that technology into the world. As we've discussed in an earlier episode, I think that the Marvel television side of things has been basically retconned out. And so the Darkhold, when we see it in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Runaways, it is a completely different prop from what we see in WandaVision. And in WandaVision, it is a grimoire. It is a magical tome that contains mystical knowledge and spells.
Yeah.
And from that Darkhold, Agatha reads a couple of passages regarding the Scarlet Witch.
Yeah, some interesting stuff there.
Yes. She's not born, she is forged. She has no coven, no need for incantation. Those we kind of already knew a little bit from what Agatha showed us last episode and told us. And then said, it's your destiny to destroy the world.
Yeah, that... Wow.
Which makes Wanda's role in the next Doctor Strange movie a little up in the air. A lot of people are thinking that she's going to be basically the villain of the next movie.
Especially since later in the episode, Agatha does say that you're stronger than the Sorcerer Supreme.
Right.
That combined with it's your destiny to destroy the world, that really does point towards Wanda being the villain in Doctor Strange 2.
Yeah. I hope it ends up not being the case, because I like Wanda as a hero.
Oh, yeah. And especially, I forgot to mention this, the moment in an episode or two ago when, and in fact, I think it was in the previously on of this episode, when Monica says, don't let Hayward make you the villain, and her response is basically, aren't I already?
Maybe I already am, yeah.
Maybe I already am. So I suspect that for the first half, maybe 2/3 of Doctor Strange 2, she's going to be the villain, but then the bigger, badder villain is going to show up and they have to team up.
That's a distinct possibility. And that's kind of where I would prefer that they would go as well. Is if they do make her a villain, make it temporary and
right.
Bring her back down to Earth somewhat. and rehumanize her and have her team up for the big fight.
Yeah.
But at this point, Wanda is still denying who she is. She's still saying, no, I don't cast spells. I'm not a witch. Whatever you think I am, that's not me. And that's when Agatha wakes up Dottie / Sarah, who just wants her 8-year-old girl back.
Oh God,
That's painful to watch.
Yeah.
Especially after she releases the rest and they all start surrounding Wanda and just begging.
Which I totally understand their perspective there and that action and all of that stuff. And I also totally understand the overwhelm and instinctive stop bugging the hell out of me and get away response that Wanda has.
Yeah. Although we don't get to that point quite yet. First, we cut back to Monica and Pietro.
Right. And Monica discovers that you were right. Pietro is Ralphisto?
Well, he's
And
he's
then I
Ralph.
was right. No, he's just Ralph.
He's just Ralph. Yeah. Joel and I were talking on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, and Joel suggested that maybe Pietro's real name is Ralph. And sure enough...
I'm always so shocked when I get one of these things right.
Yeah, I was so busy focusing on multiverses and Mephistos that I didn't see the obvious connection in front of us, and you nailed it.
I wish I had nailed it on microphone.
But
Because the only evidence your listeners have is us saying this now, but it actually happened, really.
it really did. But not only is he Ralph, but he's Ralph Boner.
Boner.
Which I have to believe is at least partially a reference to the best friend of Mike Seaver on Growing Pains, who was also named Boner and played by the late Andrew Koenig.
And he has a headshot.
Yeah, if you're in New Jersey, that's close enough to New York that you could be an aspiring actor.
Okay.
So I completely buy him having a headshot and being a young actor wanting to make it. But Agatha took him over, and so we finally find out what a crystalline possession entails.
Yeah, and by the way, Monica, you might want to hang on to that necklace that apparently gives super speed.
Yeah, that's that's one of my big unanswered questions is, can you just give someone superpowers with magic?
I guess this is that's the big question mark around him, really. What?
Yeah. Maybe it only works inside this world where Wanda thinks of him as Pietro, and so
reality has bent to her whim as it does in all of these other ways?
Right.
I don't know. At this point, she knows that he's Pietro.
True, but she's not thinking about him.
So autopilot maintains.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. That just feels wonky.
It does feel wonky, but at the same time, it is very easily story-breaking to make giving people superpowers that easy.
Right. Agatha is acknowledged as being a witch that is nowhere near as powerful as Wanda.
Right.
I mean, okay, granted, she has stolen power from, however, not just her coven, but enough witches that she calls it her thing.
Yeah.
So she has a significant amount of power, but still, is it enough to just give somebody a superpower?
Right. And was that part of the necklace, or was that a separate spell that she had to do?
And if so, does Ralph now have super speed?
Yeah. We don't know. There's
Now that's a Broadway actor there. Quick change, done.
I can act with myself. It's like playing ping pong in Days of Future Past.
Yes. That would be an interesting one-man show.
I'd go watch it.
Yeah. I think it would be an incredibly popular one-man show.
Yeah. But Monica is able to flip Pietro over, and I like how her eyes glow. And so when her eyes glow, she's able to see the energy surrounding the necklace.
Yeah.
Which verifies something I had said earlier when she opened the basement door and the glowing purple energy there. That was her seeing it with her powers.
Right. As was evidenced by her eyes glowing blue.
Right. So that's an interesting aspect, that she can see magic as well as other electromagnetic radiation.
Or maybe in this version of the universe, magic is electromagnetic.
That's completely true. Magic, depending on the universe, follows different rules.
Right.
And so it could be, as Thor says way back in his first movie, it's the Arthur C. Clarke thing.
Mm-hmm.
Any sufficiently advanced technology will be completely indistinguishable from magic.
Right.
And so if it works on an electromagnetic wavelength of some sort, then it makes sense that Monica would be able to see it.
Sure.
Then after that little fight and the revealing of Ralph, then we see Billy and Tommy watching from their window.
Doing exactly what 10-year-old kids would be doing. She told us to go in our room, we're in our room, but oh my god, look at that battle!
Oh, yeah. Even if it wasn't your mom and dad involved in the fight.
No, there's a superhero battle happening outside the window, you're watching!
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then Billy sees something that I wasn't aware he could do. He sees something that's about to happen. It could be argued that the two scenes are happening simultaneously, but we haven't seen what Billy sees yet.
So yeah, depending on when things are happening exactly, because, like you said, the timing of it is such that it could be happening simultaneously.
It could even have been written that way, where the other scene came first in the original script, and the editors said, wait, let's put this way.
Right. But, yeah, it could be that Billy is seeing the future. It's hard to say.
Mm-hmm.
We don't learn a lot about his powers in this show.
Yeah, and based on what happens later, we may or may not ever.
Well,
but we may.
Yeah, but we may. I will get there, and I still hold to my Young Avengers theory.
I had a feeling you would. And I don't think you're wrong. I'm not disagreeing with you.
But we get to that scene that Billy is seeing, and there's one line in there that creeped me out.
One?
Well, one specific one, which was, when you let us sleep, we have your nightmares.
Oh, God, yes. Oh, that was so awful.
Because not only is it the we have your nightmares, but when you let us sleep.
Yeah. Man.
Ugh. She is torturing these people. She doesn't realize it. She doesn't think that's what she's doing, but my God, the phrase, when you let us sleep.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Which, I mean, looking at what little we know of the world inside the Hex,
mm-hmm.
It is also true that she is manipulating time, in that it's sometimes daytime when it's daytime outside, and it's sometimes nighttime when it's daytime outside.
Yeah.
So it's entirely possible that these episodes are happening an episode that has multiple days could have the 2 seconds of fade out when everyone goes to sleep and then 2 seconds of fade in when everyone wakes up, and they don't actually get to sleep.
Right. It's hard to say. How the time works inside the barrier versus outside the barrier is one of the ongoing questions we've had, and is one that is never really answered. So
right.
We don't know exactly how that works, but Apparently they at least get to sleep sometimes, but it's not restful sleep.
No, and I suspect very strongly that they only get to sleep when they aren't on screen.
Or when she's asleep.
Which would make sense that it coincides with We Have Your Nightmares.
Yeah. But as Wanda starts to accept this, she says, okay, I'm gonna let you go.
Well, she doesn't say that without prompting. It's Agatha that really prompts her deciding to end this thing. When Agatha says heroes don't torture people.
Right.
So again, she's kind of straddling that line on the good and evil thing, but I really do believe that the whole purpose of doing that was to push Wanda over the edge to a point where she would either voluntarily or involuntarily give up her power to Agatha.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. Her motivation is all about getting power.
Yeah.
Taking Wanda's power away from her.
Which really, again, goes back into this suspension of disbelief, wibbly-wobbliness of she knows Wanda did this from the very, very beginning. Why does she need to know that she's the Scarlet Witch? She's a super powerful witch, and taking power away from the super powerful is Agatha's thing. Why go through the motions?
It might be necessary to figure out exactly what kind of power it is. That there's aspects of it that I could see her wanting the knowledge before she absorbs it.
Yeah, I can see that. And of course the other thing is she needs to push Wanda and get her to a point where she is willing to attack.
Yeah, because that's the only way that she can absorb Wanda's power, apparently.
Right.
As far as
what we see.
As far as we see, the only way she absorbs Wanda's power is when Wanda attacks her with it.
Right. Which is consistent with what we saw from the 1600s.
Yes. And while she's lifted the barrier, Hayward takes advantage.
He does, but before he does, we see a couple of real quick things in town. One of them is the movie theater, gives us our second Wizard of Oz reference.
Yeah.
Among other things, we've got Oz the Great and Powerful on the marquee. We also have Big Red in color, in black and white, on a double bill with Kidnapped in color in black and white, which I think was telling and creepy. And also, the third thing that it flips to I wanted to ask you about, which is Tannhauser Gate, put the fun in dysfunction. Tannhauser seems like a very specific thing that we haven't heard about. Is that a reference that I don't know?
It is a reference, but it's not to Marvel.
Okay. This was an actual movie?
Not as far as I know, but the Tannhauser Gate is referenced in Rutger Hauer's speech in Blade Runner. People refer to it as the Tears in the Rain monologue.
Right.
The Tannhauser Gate is one of the many things that he has seen, but it is now time for him to die. So it is referencing an artificial being who is reliving his moments in life before his death.
That's bizarre. It's especially bizarre because that's the version of the movie theater that we land on later in the episode when the real world comes back.
Yes,
that's the movie that's on.
That is what's currently playing at the movie theater.
Wow.
And so, yeah, all of the movies that were seen on the marquee at one point or another are all references to what's happening in the world. But this one is the most oblique.
Yeah. Although I did enjoy Put the Fun in Dysfunction.
Yes.
The other thing that happens that I just thought was kind of an interesting detail is that when Wanda is trying to open up the gate, trying to open the hex and release everyone, and she tells the town people, go run, and they do, they are running away, the world is glitching around them, but these people who have also been changed significantly in many ways every time she changes time periods, don't. They are consistent.
Well, at this point, they've been released. Their clothes were changed, and maybe their hairstyles were changed,
Mm-hmm.
but their physical being, their bodies were never changed.
True.
They were mentally taken over, but they were never physically altered in the way that, say, the truck
Right.
was. And so, yeah, I think it makes sense that because A, they're in the modern world, so they're basically wearing what they were wearing when Wanda showed up, or something very similar.
Okay.
And they are free of Wanda's control. And so it doesn't seem like there's any leftover aspect of the spell at this point that would be affecting them personally. And so I can see where they wouldn't be glitching while the rest of the town is.
I can buy that. And then, as you say, Hayward takes advantage. Let's move in. It's time. Let's go. And they enter the hex. And as they do, we see roughly how deep the border is. I was paying attention to that because we discussed it in a previous episode.
Yeah.
This thing was roughly 4 truck lengths deep. That's 60 or 75 feet or so. So Monica's struggling journey through this thing makes a lot of sense.
Oh, definitely. that assuming that is not easily walked through, and we saw that it wasn't.
Right.
So yeah, it makes sense that it would take as long as it did for her to get through that thickness of the barrier.
Yeah.
But after Hayward and his team drive in, then we get back to the Vision and Cataract fight.
Oh man, so many clever things in how this battle took place.
Oh, all of the phasing and...
Yeah.
Yeah. But at this point, because the barrier is coming down, Vision is losing his integrity. He's breaking down. And then the boys show up and we see them falling apart as well, which forces Wanda to put the barrier back up.
Mm-hmm.
So Wanda is stuck in this position of, like Agatha says at that point, save the town or save your family. And that is a rough position to be in.
Especially with all of the psychological journey that we took with Wanda to get here.
Right.
I mean, having to choose that is... oh, God. It's rough.
Oh, definitely. And so Agatha and Wanda continue their fight. Agatha absorbs more of Wanda's power. Cataract shows back up. Sword shows up. And we've got what I looked at as the Incredibles moment.
Yes. Oh, such great writing in that moment.
Well, I'm just talking about the pose of, the 4 of them all looking ready to take him on. But yeah, the boys, we haven't trained you, we haven't prepared you for this.
But you were born for it.
Yeah. And my favorite line is, boys, handle the military. Mommy will be right back.
Yeah, as big and over the top as this episode really was, there were some fantastic moments.
Yeah, we've definitely gotten out of the sitcom aspect of it. There's no more contrived humor. It's back to that MCU kind of pithy delivery and juxtaposition of line with what is happening on screen.
Right.
And so it's absolutely great. And amazing that we have gone from this Dick Van Dyke, I Love Lucy 50s sitcom humor and so gently transitioned throughout the episodes to get to this point, and it never felt unnatural.
Yeah. The writing was so good throughout this series.
Yeah. I mentioned this earlier in a different episode, but the fact that the head screenwriter for this is also the screenwriter for Black Widow means I am looking forward to that movie.
Well,
even if I wasn't already.
You wouldn't have been
yes.
otherwise.
But
come on.
You know what I'm saying. And Billy and Tommy working together to freeze the soldiers in place and then take all their guns away. I can't wait for Young Avengers.
Yeah, if this is a peek into the kind of thing we're going to see, that's going to be so much fun.
Yeah. But unfortunately they missed one because Hayward was still in the truck. And so he gets out and fires his pistol. And this is where Monica gets her I can do that moment.
Right. Yeah. And let's be clear about this. Hayward gets out of the truck specifically to shoot some kids.
Yes.
Vision has gone away. Wanda has gone away. He leaves the truck so that he can shoot some children.
Yeah. Like I said, mustache twirling villain.
Yeah.
There is nothing redeeming about this character. I mean, yes, they are superpowered beings who have been created by a person that you think of as villainous, but you're still shooting kids.
Yeah. And yes, they did establish earlier in the series that he has a grudge against superpowered beings in general. But come on!
Yeah. But we get that superhero moment with Monica, which I absolutely love, seeing her body turn into light, basically, and absorb the thick light. Yeah, because, well, she's able to absorb energy of all types, including kinetic energy.
Oh god, she's Speedball?
No. No one is Speedball, but Speedball. Well. No one can be Speedball, but Speedball. Speedball is the greatest superhero that ever lived. Monica's good, but she's no Speedball.
Okay, Kurt. Okay, but no, let's be fair. Speedball's power is absorbing and then using the kinetic energy.
Yes.
And Monica has not shown that second part.
No. Like I talked about when we first discussed Monica and her powers in the comics, she typically uses her powers for blasts of energy.
Oh, so she can do that second part.
In the comics, she can.
Okay.
But
she
it's
has
usually
not yet explored her abilities here.
Right. But it's the energy she projects out is electromagnetic.
Fair.
In the comics, as far as I can recall, we have not necessarily seen her absorb kinetic energy in that way. All of her powers are electromagnetic radiation based.
Okay.
It's all about light and X-rays and infrared and, that sort of thing.
So Hayward shoots towards the kids,
yes.
And we have that wonderful exchange between Monica and
Billy. Yes. Like your tricks. Like
yours too.
Yes.
And then Hayward tries to get away.
Yep. Not gonna work though, because
no.
Thankfully, Darcy shows back up.
Hooray for the funnel cake truck.
Yes. Have fun in prison.
Yeah. Another great moment, totally in character.
Yes.
And my initial reaction was, my god, that funnel cake caused so much damage to that military truck. That is so unreal. Oh wait, that is a military truck disguised as a funnel cake truck.
Yep. It's still made of the same materials as the original truck was. And so, yes, it's going to be as strong as the truck that it's...
smashing through. Yeah, it worked perfectly.
Yep. Then after that moment, we get to my favorite part of this whole episode.
Hey, I know. Let's put a pause on this huge battle so that we can have a quick philosophy lesson. Which is such a Vision thing.
Yes.
That was such a Vision move.
Yes, it is Vision and Cataract having their discussion of the ship of Theseus, which is, it's an actual thought experiment from philosophy. The ship of Theseus, as it traveled needed to be repaired and replaced, and so new boards were put in. And so the question is, if you have replaced every piece of the ship of Theseus, when you reach your destination, are you still on the ship of Theseus?
Right.
And, we have Vision, who has the spirit. He is the emotional core of the original Vision, whereas Cataract is the body and has everything but the Mind Stone.
And until the end of the conversation, the memories.
Right. So Vision is able to release those memories because they're still in his head, in his computer base, in his database somewhere, but they have been blocked, basically.
Right, and I have a problem with a line here. The writers made me upset with one thing.
Okay. What's that?
Vision says to Cataract, as a carbon-based synthezoid. He's not. He's not carbon-based. He's vibranium-based.
Well,
if vibranium is just a specific organization of carbon atoms, then Wakanda totally falls apart.
Yeah. So I understand where you're coming from. I think that his body is vibranium, but I think his brain may not necessarily be vibranium. Wanda even points out later that he is made of wires and blood and bone. So there is some organic basis to his life. I will say, honestly, I bumped up against it as well, but I think there are reasonable explanations that could be used to explain it.
Alright. So, yes, then Vision releases those memories from Cataract.
Yes.
And Cataract goes bye-bye.
At that point, Cataract becomes what I will now refer to as White Vision.
Yeah, the change in his eyes made that transition pretty clear.
Yes. And he basically flies off into a future movie.
Yes.
Which movie? We have no idea. I'm sure we'll see him again at some point, but he will not quite be the same Vision that we had in the previous movies.
Agreed. He
will be more computerized, slightly less human than he was up to this point.
Yeah, it's pretty clear he's not happy with his current state of existence, and he's off to go on a self-discovery mission. He's got to go walk about.
A Vision Quest?
Yes. For the listeners, I am currently striking my forehead. If he doesn't show up in Phase 4, that's a great title.
It's been done in the comics, so I'm not pulling that out of nowhere. But when you started talking about his his walkabout and such, I was like, aha.
You gotta find moments to pull those things out,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. But returning to the show, after the Ship of Theseus scene that we both loved, now we get back to Wanda and Agnes's fight. And this is when Wanda pulls her disappearing act and comes up behind Agnes and puts her into her nightmare.
Which, you've never had access to my thoughts or whatever it was that the line was an episode or two ago. Yeah, Just needed to be a little bit more direct about it.
Yep. But it gets turned around on her.
Yeah.
And the witches start first verbally attacking her and then surround her and tie Wanda up to the pole where Agatha was. And when Wanda fights back, we see the crown start to manifest.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me that in the Salem scene in the previous episode, we did see the mother start to manifest a blue crown.
I saw that as well, yeah.
And so that is obviously a symbol of using your power or coming into your power in some way.
Yeah. definitely a symbol of significance that perhaps we'll get elucidation on later, perhaps not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a moment, and Agatha was not happy seeing it.
No.
But before that happened, Agatha gave Wanda the clue that she needed. Power is not your problem, knowledge is.
Right. That combined with the little lesson she gave her in the previous episode is how we get our conclusion.
Which was so brilliant.
Yes.
That was a very... Again, that difference that you mentioned between let's just have an all-out special effects battle and no, these characters are smart.
Yeah. And it was interesting because when I watched it the first time and Wanda is saying, take it, and she just bombards Agatha with hex bolts, let's just call them that, but is also firing at the barrier.
And she's doing it in a way that it looks like she's losing control and being very erratic.
Yeah, but
that's an act.
Yeah, even just watching that the first time, I was like, she's doing something to the barrier. Is she going to take it down? Is it what is happening here? And then when the runes get revealed, I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, of course. How could I not have seen that? It's so well done, that reveal.
And even leading up to it, when Vision comes up to try and help, and she, no, you stay out of this.
Stay out of this. I got this.
It's clearly she had a plan.
Yeah.
And don't interrupt me. I'm in it now.
And this is when she fully accepts who she is, that she is the Scarlet Witch.
Mm-hmm.
And we get the moment that we referenced earlier that looks similar to her vision from the Mind Stone.
And everything about it is very clearly supposed to look like that. The direction of the lines of the red power.
Yeah, the only difference is that it is the red power. In both cases, she's backlit by a monochromatic light source. Mm-hmm. But in the Mind Stone vision, it's a yellow, whereas here it's red. So that's the only thing that still kind of says, it doesn't seem
was
like
it actually
that
her?
It's definitely referencing that moment, but I still am not sure that it was necessarily a vision of the future.
I'm with you.
But yeah, she gets her full costume, which is straight out of a George Perez drawing. I love her costume.
It's so good. It's beautifully realized, and we talked during the Halloween Spooktacular episode about all of these 80s stylized comic book versions of the low rent versions of the costumes, and this was Wanda's. It did not occur to me that we would get the fully MCU style version of that costume by the end, and so good.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah. And with her powers coming back, so does her accent.
I missed that.
Yeah, when she's back on the ground telling Agatha, you're going to live here now, she is back in Sokovia. She has her accent fully back.
Well, good for her. That makes it very much a decision. I can approve of that.
Yeah.
But let's not walk away from that moment so quickly. You live here now. Where?
Westview.
Yeah, but where? She didn't make Agatha a new house. She's not going to live with Ralph. Where does she live?
Some empty house in Westview, because there were plenty of...
Yeah, there were properties available.
Yeah.
She's going to live with Agent Franklin.
I was going to get there. Yeah, she'll be somewhere, but there's a lot left kind of hanging there with how is this going to work, but that's not important to this story.
Right.
What is important to this story is the family, and they head home as the barrier is starting to shrink down.
Right. They head home at nighttime.
Yes.
As the barrier is starting to shrink down. It's been daytime this whole time.
Right.
So dusk is happening inside the hex.
Again, we know that time is kind of up to Wanda's whim, and so she wants the kids to go to bed, and so it's nighttime. But, oh man, these goodbyes.
Ugh. And they do the scene in the kids' room just note perfect.
Yes.
Because no parents would say what's going to happen. That's just not how it would go. You say your goodnights, you say your goodbyes, and oh, that moment of thanks for choosing me to be your mom. My wife and I say that kind of thing to our son all the time. It was perfect.
Yeah. I don't have kids myself, but even to me, it felt like it was picture perfect. I saw on Twitter a person post saying parents saying goodbye to their children in the MCU, and it was I love you 3000 with Tony's hologram, his final message, and it was this moment, and God, what was the third? Oh, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 with Yondu.
Oh.
So.
Yeah?
Yeah. They know how to portray family in this universe.
They really do. They're good at it.
Yeah. Then after the kids go to bed, then we get Vision and Wanda saying goodbye to one another. And this explanation she gives of who Vision is.
Yeah, what am I?
Yeah. You're the piece of the Mind Stone that lives in me. You're a body of wires and blood and bone that I created. You're my sadness and my hope, but mostly you're my love.
And then his line, I've been a voice but no body, a body but not human, and a memory made real. Who knows what I'll be next?
Well, you'll be a white synthesoid that with no Mind Stone. But yeah, all of this dialogue here is so picture perfect and touches on all of the themes of loss and grief.
Yeah, going into this show and certainly into this episode, I was not expecting to cry 3 times or so in this episode.
Yeah.
Which, shouldn't surprise me. I'm a huge sap.
As I said earlier, I've enjoyed our theorizing and all of that, but this show was so much more important than introducing Mephisto or the multiverse into the world. It was a much more human story, and that's more important than adding new aspects to the MCU in terms of, the comics and stuff like that.
Yeah. I will say, one of the things that I said in one of our earlier episodes was that these changes that are being made are so much bigger than just this show, and therefore Wanda is a much more important character than we've seen certainly the women in the MCU be before towards the greater universe's storylines. I think that they undid a lot of those. This whole, maybe there's an X-Men universe, well, maybe not.
Right.
A lot of those things that prompted me to say that about Wanda were undone.
True, but
I still agree with you that this was a hugely important thing because we haven't gotten as much of these characters are actually humans. They're real.
Yeah. And we still know that the next Doctor Strange movie is called The Multiverse of Madness, and that Wanda will be appearing in it.
Right.
And so we know that those things could still be coming up. They just weren't brought in this show because that's not what this show was about.
Right.
Then we get a nice little conversation between Wanda and Monica after that, and credits roll. But
but it's an MCU story.
Yes. So this time we not only get a mid-credits, but we also get a post-credits. So let's start with the mid-credits, which is Wu taking control of the scene and Monica being sent to the theater where she talks to somebody who was sent by an old friend of her mother's.
Right.
And she specifically says, he heard you'd been grounded and he'd like to meet you. So it's not Captain Marvel.
No, this is Nick.
Well, it's either Nick or Talos. Who, pretended to be Nick.
Right. It could be Talos, but I don't think so.
Yeah, it could be either one. It's probably Nick because they point into space and we know Nick is in space and Talos is currently grounded pretending to be Nick.
Right. Very much currently, because that's... I mean, we're heading into
yes.
Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yes. Yeah, the timeline on this is a little weird. As we mentioned earlier, this takes place before Far From Home. And another thing is that it's been established in interviews and official timelines that have been printed out and such, is that the snap took place in 2018. And so the return took place in 2023, 5 years later. And so we're still catching up. We can have a bunch of movies that take place immediately after Endgame and still not be falling behind in the timeline.
Right. Yeah, that does make sense.
So by the time Captain Marvel 2 comes out next year, we'll still be not quite caught up to the actual year that it is in the MCU.
Right.
We know that Monica is going to be in Captain Marvel 2, and I'm guessing that she'll also probably show up in Secret Invasion.
Okay.
Which is another TV show that they have announced and is in pre-production that will be starring Samuel L. Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn.
Okay, then yeah, that totally
Nick Fury
makes sense.
and Talos, and
so whichever one is being referred to here, it's that show.
Well, like I said, she's going to be in Captain Marvel first, and then Secret Invasion will come after that.
Gotcha. All right.
So we know where that's headed.
Right.
And now we get to the post-credits scene.
Which, I gotta say, it took a minute. This post-credits scene occurred, and as it was happening, I'm looking at it and going, are we at Alkali Lake? It looked like we were about to see Weapon X.
I didn't have that thought. To me, the scene looked a lot like it's the end of one of the two Hulk movies. I think it's the end of the Edward Norton, and he's meditating in kind of a wilderness area. It reminded me of that scene. Not having watched that scene really recently, I could be way off, but that's where my mind originally went. And it's that same sort of thing, where it's somebody being alone with themselves and practicing their power.
Sure.
Kind of accepting who they are and acknowledging that other part of themselves. Because Wanda is relaxing, sipping tea, and the Scarlet Witch is in her bedroom, floating in midair, astral projection style, studying the Darkhold.
Right. Do you think this is separate entities? I thought that one of them was a projection being made by the other.
Yeah, I think it is, an astral projection sort of thing. But the fact that she's able to do two things at once does kind of hint towards some sort of separation, because when Doctor Strange astrally projects, his body just lies still.
Right.
Same with when the Ancient One forces Bruce Banner out of the Hulk's body.
Yeah, he just kind of collapses.
Yeah, the Hulk body just lies down. So the fact that she can walk around and make herself a cup of tea while her astral projection studies the Darkhold, again, points to the fact that she's more powerful than Doctor Strange.
Right.
And while she's studying the Darkhold, she hears Tommy and Billy.
Yeah, that was kind of awesome, a little creepy, and hinting towards other things that you have pointed out in the past.
Yeah, so I had assumed up until this point that the Tommy and Billy that we got in WandaVision were going to be the same Tommy and Billy that eventually showed up in Young Avengers. I didn't think they were going to kill the kids.
Right.
Didn't think they were going to go that dark. I was wrong. But energy is neither created nor destroyed. It's just moved around.
Mm-hmm.
And so Tommy and Billy may still be out there in some form, even after the barrier removed them.
Maybe.
And so, or they are in another universe, and that's how we get to the multiverse.
Yeah. In fact, I could totally see Wanda breaking down walls of reality to try and go get her kids being a way that Mephisto gets a weakened border and is able to break into the world, and so she is the initial quote-unquote villain that Doctor Strange has to try to battle for the first part of the movie, and then it fits into all of our theories.
Right, yeah. So I think we're still going to get Young Avengers, and that when Billy and Tommy do come back, that they will have aged up to teenage. We'll actually see them like they are in the Young Avengers, because we've got Kate coming up in Hawkeye. I mean, we've talked about this. Basically, all of the Young Avengers are on deck. I think the one that I keep forgetting to mention is Stature, which is Ant-Man's daughter.
Oh. What? What? Okay. Well, she's now a teenager too.
Exactly.
Huh.
Yep.
Interesting.
So.
Well, that has some potential.
Yeah. So we know she'll be showing up in Ant-Man 3. At least Cassie will. We don't know if she'll be Stature yet. But we've got basically all the original Young Avengers, because they've gone through a few iterations. But
sure.
But we've got basically all the original Young Avengers set up to show up in upcoming movies. So
yeah. I
think probably Avengers 5 will be Young Avengers.
Which does make total sense.
Because we still don't even have a confirmation of an Avengers 5.
Right.
At this point, Phase 4 is mostly TV shows and a few movies that are mostly sequels. The only new characters that are getting movies so far are the Eternals and Shang-Chi.
Right. Be interesting to see where they take us.
Yeah.
I am definitely looking forward to it. Now, I know that you have to go, and I'm sorry to hold you up on this. I have two things that I want to bring up real quick.
Okay. So, questions.
Well, more comments. One of them is a nothing, and the other may or may not be at all significant, which is going back to when Monica displayed her powers and she had those bullets phasing through her. Mm-hmm. Her eyes did not glow blue. They glowed gold. I normally may not have noticed that, but there has been an awful lot of discussion between the two of us about color.
True. Also, when she saw the necklace, mm-hmm. her eyes glowed purple for a moment.
Interesting.
As I've mentioned, her powers are light-based, and so she can, depending on what exactly she's doing, it will have different effects color-wise. She's
Yeah.
done blue for kind of resisting force and gold for light phasing sort of thing, and purple for seeing the magical stuff. So yeah, her powers are probably going to use the entire spectrum, so to speak.
Yeah, I strongly suspect that this is going to come up again. And it's just one of those things that, like I said, we have not explored her much yet. But in Captain Marvel 2, I anticipate that her eyes are going to have some interesting impact. Or at least some reflection.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Captain Marvel 2, especially because of the hint about the relationship between Monica and Carol. So where that goes, finding out exactly why they have an issue with, or why Monica has an issue with Carol, and how that relationship gets repaired is going to be an interesting story to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Unfortunately, I do need to get going. But again, like I said at the beginning of this episode, and I've said many times throughout this deep dive that we've had together, I've really enjoyed our time discussing the show. And I want to thank you again, Joel, for taking the time to join me on our own vision quest.
Yes. It's been an absolute joy. I've enjoyed the heck out of it. Thank you. And thank you, listeners.
That brings us to the end of the discussion of this show. I plan on repeating this with Loki, which releases in June. But until then, I'm returning to the every other week schedule. Next episode is going to be the closest date to the 3rd anniversary of Welcome to Geektown. I have thoughts as to a topic, but if you have any ideas for a subject or questions you want answered in future episodes, feel free to send them along. The address is welcome2geektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you'd prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome-to-geektown or Twitter @geektownpodcast. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, come join the Patreon at patreon.com/welcome-to-geektown to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, and a monthly shout-out. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show, so we can all tell them,
Welcome to Geektown. Population? Us.
Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All other sound clips are the copyrighted material of their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.